In this video, I'm going to talk to you about renting versus buying. It's a topic that's been covered a ton in the past. I'm going to give you some specific examples, and I'm going to cover this topic as it pertains to the Portland metropolitan real estate market. Stay tuned to the end. I'll give you a few tips for both renting and buying. All that starts now. Hey everyone, Seth Marchant with the Home Team Brokers here. If you're new to this channel, living in Oregon, we show you what the lifestyle is like in Oregon. So if you want to see more videos about what it's like to live in Oregon, make sure and hit the subscribe button and tap the bell. That way you'll get notified each time we drop a new video, which is every week. As realtors, we love to help people that are moving in the state of Oregon. If you're one of those people, if you have questions about moving, you can call, text, or email us. You can even click the link below if you want to schedule a Zoom with us in the description. All right, let's talk about renting versus buying in the Portland metropolitan area. And real quick, I'll start with the pros of both. We'll start with the pros of buying first. The first one is obvious, equity, right? A lot of homes in the Portland metropolitan area over the past year have gone up about 20%. So if your home is, say, worth $500,000, which is currently lower than the average home price in the Portland metro area, if that goes up 20% over the course of a year, 20% of $500,000 being $100,000, your home is now worth $600,000. That's what a lot of homes have seen over the past 2 years in the Portland metropolitan area and throughout a lot of the country. Now that's not sustainable, that's not typical. You're not going to continue to see homes going up 20% year over year. Historically in the United States, there's been a lot of years where it was 3, 4, 5%. But Oregon is one of the more desirable states in the United States. It's a migratory state. There's more people coming in than coming out. So that props up the home values, and typically Oregon is going to do better than the average. So for most people, the obvious one, the big one for buying is equity, gaining equity in your home. Now, of course, there is always the outside chance that something happens like that crash in 07, 08. It's not likely that that specifically will happen again. That happened due to a lot of people taking out mortgages that they couldn't afford with variable rates that made their mortgage payments higher than they could afford. And so consequently, when those rates went up and their mortgage payments went up, they all of a sudden had to very quickly sell their home. The market was flooded with homes, and all of a sudden you have more homes in the market than you do buyers. That would be a circumstance where home values might actually go down. There's a lot of laws, a lot of things in place now that will prevent lenders from lending to people that can't afford homes. So something like that is not likely to happen again. But of course, it's not guaranteed that your home's going to go up in value. It's just that if you look at home values across the United States for the past 50 years, 07, 08 is really kind of the only place where they actually dipped for a little while. And just remember, for home values to go down, you'll need a similar set of circumstances where there's a ton of inventory. There's more homes on the market than there are buyers. That's one way. Or the demand will have to just go away. All the buyers will just all of a sudden not want to have to buy homes anymore. So all those buyers would just have to go away. So one of two things would have to happen. There'd have to be a flood of inventory on the market, or demand would have to go down significantly. Neither of those two things really ever happen. So that's one reason why home values don't typically go down year over year. And of course, since home values have gone up so much in recent years, there's a lot of people that have a ton of equity in their home and that have low interest rates. So they have low mortgage payments. And so for that reason, it's going to be harder for people to default. You know, there's going to be more options for them. It's going to be easier if they did need to sell their home quicker, they would be able to do so and still not be underwater because they've had so much equity built up in their home in recent years. So the circumstances of 07, 08 are a lot different than they are now. So like I said, it's unlikely something like that could happen. It's more likely that you'll probably see a steady, slow gain over the next 5, 10, 20 years in your home. So equity is the biggest reason that people buy. Another benefit of buying and having a mortgage payment instead of paying rent is that your mortgage payment, and again, you should not be getting those variable rates, your mortgage payment will stay the same. Mortgages could be 15 years, 20 years, or even 30 years. A lot of people are in a 30-year mortgage, so your payment is going to be the same now as it is 30 years from now, whereas rent, of course, is going to go up. I've seen a lot of really, really cheap mortgage payments here in the recent years, and I see some homeowners that are saying, like, rent's gone up so much, I don't know how people afford to rent. I don't know how people afford to rent instead of buy. You do also have tax benefits. There are tax write-offs. You can write off the mortgage interest. It's also a little bit better too if you have pets. You don't have to worry about finding a place that accepts pets or paying a pet deposit. So for pet owners, it's usually a little bit easier for you to be a homeowner rather than a renter. Another benefit of being a homeowner is if you do own a home, oftentimes it's in an area where a lot of other people will own their homes. So for example, you're maybe not in a condo or a townhouse, or that's just not as common as being in like a single family home. So you're not surrounded by as many renters. And once you become a homeowner, things tend to change a little bit from being a renter. All of a sudden you care a lot more about if your toilets are clogging, or the garbage disposal's having a problem, or you get worried about your floors or baseboards getting scuffed up, weeds and lawn care, gutters and moss on the roof. All of a sudden you start to care a little bit more about those things. And that, that can really be a benefit when you're surrounded by other like-minded people, that also care about their property. Obviously, being surrounded by people that don't care about their property as much, can be problematic for obvious reasons. And that takes me to one of the biggest benefits of renting, is you don't care about those things. Garbage disposal breaks, towel rack falls off the wall, toilets running and not flushing, washing machines having problems. You call your landlord. So that is one of the biggest benefits, I think, of being renters. You don't have to worry about any of that stuff. Whenever there's a problem, you just simply call the landlord, somebody else's problem. And it's really a great luxury to some. I mean, there's some people out there that can afford to buy, but they choose to rent. And sometimes they'll rent everything. They'll rent their furniture just so they don't have to worry about buying and selling and maintaining these things. And the next one is selling. So that can be a benefit of renting, is you don't have to worry about selling. Now, if something did happen in the market where it really makes it a buyer's market, that could be a pain to try and sell your home. Again, it's probably not likely based on the reasons that I just mentioned, but it's not impossible. So that's something that renters also don't have to worry about. Now, if you are a renter, another benefit sometimes is amenities. If you're in a complex of townhouses or condos, you might have a pool or a fitness center or sport court, something like that. That's something that you don't always get as a buyer. Sometimes there will be a neighborhood association with those things, but more common for places that are renting. Now, another benefit of renting, I've heard a lot of people say flexibility. Frankly, I don't quite see it as much. Of course, when you're renting, you're typically signing a lease. It's usually not month to month, right? It's oftentimes a 12-month lease and sometimes more. Now, granted, oftentimes you can break those leases. Usually you're going to pay a few months worth of rent to break a lease, which if you had a really good reason to move, that might not be the biggest deal. But flexibility to me is it mostly being a seller's market throughout the entire United States. If you do have to sell your home, it's usually not too hard to do. So I don't necessarily see flexibility being a big benefit for renters, but I do hear a lot of renters, claim that that's a benefit. So that could be subjective. That might be the case for you for whatever reason. So I'll put flexibility in there as well for renters. All right, so as I mentioned earlier, let's compare something in the Portland metropolitan area. Let's take a home that's currently on the market for rent, and let's compare that. Let's see what it would look like to buy the home and compare the rent versus the mortgage payment. So I did a search on Google. I searched 4-bedroom homes in Portland. I clicked the first link that wasn't an ad. It came up as Trulia. I believe this is what you're seeing. This is sorted as the price being highest. So these prices are probably a little bit higher than average. Now, anecdotally, I've heard that the rental market in Portland is pretty tough. Just doing a quick search, it looks like there's a lot on the market. And so we'll just take one of these homes that came up at the top of my search. Let's do 7225 Southeast 17th Avenue. All right, so I looked it up on the MLS. This home sold in 2018, just about 4 years ago, for $575,000. Let's try and figure out, let's get a ballpark for what we think the mortgage is currently on this home. And in putting some of these numbers together, let's be generous and just say that they only put 5% down, which will give them a higher mortgage payment. A lot of people putting 20% down, but let's just say 5% for this example. And these are the numbers that you get. So you're looking at probably high twos, 2,700, maybe 2,800, something like that. If they did put closer to 20% down, they are going to be closer to the low twos. With a $4,500 a month rent, that gives them enough margin to probably pay for some bills and pay taxes and not not lose money every month, maybe make a little bit of profit in renting this home, aside from the equity that they're gaining over time. So those numbers would probably be typical for a rental. Now let's see what the home would look like if we bought it today and compare that to the rent payment. I valued this home at somewhere in the lowish to mid 700s, so I put it at $735,000. So about $170,000 appreciation over the past 4 years, which to be fair is a little bit lower than average for a lot of the Portland metropolitan area. So I didn't necessarily pick an area that had the highest appreciation, and I could have cherry picked a home that had higher appreciation. So I'm using a little bit lower appreciation, lower down payment, so this makes this argument really favorable to the rental side. I just want to really steel man the rental side. As a realtor, obviously I'm going to say that it's better for you to buy your home, and I'm going to suggest to buy rather than rent. And to be fair to myself, I bought my first home well before I was a realtor because I believe that it was better to buy instead of rent. So if we buy this home right around value at $735,000 with a current rate of the mid 5s, 5.5%, again with 5% down, that gives us a mortgage payment with taxes and insurance out the door right around $4,500, so right at where that rental rate is. Now to be fair, that down payment is going to be the biggest hump, kind of trying to compare apples to apples here. You obviously don't have to put a down payment on a rental. You might have to put first and last and maybe a pet deposit, which is probably going to be less than 5%. There are some lending programs out there that allow you to go lower than 5% depending on who you are, your circumstances. And if you do have questions about that, we have a preferred lender that we can connect you with. But once you get past that hump of that first down payment, as you go through life, as you buy more houses, as you upsize or downsize, you're going to carry that equity forward. And what most people do is they take the equity from the house that they're selling when they buy their next house, and they use that as a down payment. So oftentimes you're really just coming up with that initial down payment one time. So I think just kind of looking at these broad numbers, it does, even in this market, in the Portland metropolitan area right now, it does make just as much sense, if not more sense, to buy rather than rent. And that's probably going to be true for a lot of properties that you're going to encounter. Now, if you're wondering more about equity and building equity in your home, I'll put a link here in the description from the Federal Housing Finance Agency. And what that link does is you'll find a calculator there. What you can do is you'll select your state, so this will work for any state. Then you'll want to select a region within your state and make it a little bit more accurate. Then you'll put in a sales price and you'll put in a date. I went back 10 years. I selected a sales price of $400,000. And then you'll pick an end date. That could be the most recent date that you're doing this, or it could be any date in the past, and it goes by quarters. So 4 dates per year, 4 quarters per year that you can choose from. So I picked up $400,000, which is probably actually about a little bit higher than average 10 years ago. So what you can see in the Portland metropolitan area, though, if we go back 10 years, we can see that a $400,000 house 10 years ago is worth almost $1 million now. So you can kind of play around with this calculator if you kind of want to test out equity in your area or somewhere else in Oregon, what average home value growth looks like over certain periods of time. All right, now I know some people might be thinking, well, it's really tough for buyers, and even though rates have gone up and the market's slowed down a little bit, it's still really tough for buyers. And that's true, it still is a seller's market. But consider this, if you consider now compared to like the last few years, which what we saw was low interest rates, historically low interest rates, and these crazy bidding wars where people are bidding up home values and the list on home prices. So some people might be paying 10% over list. So $500,000 house, 10% of that is $100,000. So you might be paying $600,000 for a $500,000 house with, like, say, a 3% interest rate, if you're lucky to win the offer amongst all the other offers that you're competing against. That's what we've seen for the last few years. Would you rather have that, or would you rather have a slowing market where maybe you're only competing with a couple offers? Maybe even you get lucky you're not competing with any offers and you're paying list price, but you're paying a little bit higher interest rate. Now just remember, in a home transaction, in a home sales transaction, you're not going to be able to change that sales price, but you are going to be able to change the interest rate later. So would you rather have a high sales price and a lower interest rate in which you can't change the sales price and you can't really go any lower on the interest rate? Or would you maybe have a little bit of a lower sales price and a higher interest rate that you could then refinance later? So there's kind of a silver lining. If you look at it from that perspective, in some ways, the market right now is a lot better for buyers than it was over the last few years, even though interest rates are slightly higher. Again, because you're not having to compete with as many people, and you can just go ahead and refinance later. And despite inventory being low, inventory is higher than it has been in the last few years. So there is a little bit more for buyers to choose from. We're also starting to see more price reductions. And some sellers are starting to get a little bit nervous. You know, over the past few years, there's been this expectation that a home seller was going to be able to put their house on the market and the house was going to go under contract within a week or within days. They're going to have multiple offers, and it was just a matter of choosing the best offer. And that has been largely the case for a lot of homeowners, which has set that expectation. But since that's not the case now, some homeowners that aren't getting, that type of response are starting to panic a little bit, and that's giving the buyers a little bit more leverage to negotiate. You do also have sellers that have listed their house above market value because it's been such a red hot seller's market, because there are all these buyers out there that they know are getting into bidding wars. People have been getting sale prices that are way above home value. But now that the market's slowed down a little bit, those homes that are listed way above value are obviously not going under contract as quickly or not selling at all. And so now we're starting to see some price reductions. For all of you first-time buyers that have just been online shopping for the last 2 years, you probably don't know what a price reduction is. You've probably never seen a price reduction before. In a balanced market, about a third of homes will take a price cut before they close. And we're getting kind of close to that point. It's been, I think, in the 20s for the past few months. We're getting close to 33% of homes on the market doing a price reduction before they close. So that's getting back to normal. Seeing those price reductions on Zillow is a normal thing. And it's kind of accelerating lately, like I said, because some of these sellers haven't quite adjusted. All those sellers that are listing above value, those are the ones really taking the price cuts right now. So don't let that confuse you either. Home values aren't going down. It's just that there's people that have priced their home way above value, and they're going to have to bring it down closer to what the actual value is. Now, if you're somebody that does have to rent, you're not ready to buy yet, I would suggest watching more of our videos and getting a feel for where the best place in Oregon is for you, or in the Portland metropolitan area is for you. Make sure and subscribe, tap the bell, and that way you'll get notified every time we release a new video. And you'll want to, if you're renting, I would suggest trying to rent in the area that you want to buy in. So you really get a feel for that area. Make sure that's the right area for you if you can. And if you're somebody that's ready to buy, as licensed brokers in the state of Oregon, we'd love to hear from you. You can call, text, email, or like I've said before, schedule a Zoom with us in the description below. Click that link up towards the very top. And if you're not ready, here's my tip for buyers. There's a lot of people out there that are trying to time the market. There's people talking about the market crashing. My tip for you is to buy a home when you are ready to buy a home. Don't try and time the market. It's probably not going to work out for you. There's a lot of professionals, there's a lot of people that eat, sleep, breathe real estate that try and time the market, and they still get it wrong. There were a lot of investors in early 2020, right before the pandemic really started, that thought with a global pandemic, with lockdowns, with people not being able to go to work, with people not being able to actually go see properties, there's no way the real estate market is not going to tank. So there's a lot of people that sold in early 2020 predicting that the real estate market would tank throughout the pandemic. And obviously that didn't happen. And I get it. It makes sense. I mean, it would seem like with the global economy shutting down and having a pandemic and people being quarantined and not being able to move around and travel around, it would make sense that the real estate market would at least slow down, but that's obviously what didn't happen. So don't try and predict the market. Don't try and predict a crash or when homes are going to go up the most, or if they're ever going to go down. Again, if you've been watching me for a while, you probably know my opinion. I don't think that homes are going to go down. They might level off for a little while, but I don't see home values going down. So don't try and predict the market. Just wait to buy for when you're ready, and then when that time comes, we'll be here for you. My best advice for renters, try and rent in the off time and negotiate if you can. You don't know until you ask. So in Oregon, especially in the Portland metropolitan area, the market is really the warmest during springtime and summertime rental and the real estate market slows down. People just don't move as much during the fall time and the winter time, when the weather's really bad and it's raining. It sucks to move all your stuff in the pouring down rain. So if you can, you want to save a few bucks, try and be one of those people that does move during the off season. You might be able to negotiate. If you can find a place that's under renovations too, that's always a way. Oftentimes that landlords are willing to give you a little cut on the price if they're doing like a remodel or an update or something like that. So search in the off season and try and negotiate too. Believe it or not, sometimes you can negotiate your monthly payment on those rental contracts. If you haven't tried before, like I said, you only know if you try. All right, I hope that information helps you. Again, subscribe, like this video if it was informative. You can feel free to comment. We'll respond back. Again, if you're thinking about moving, give us a call, and I hope that helps you. Take care, everyone.